This is the Therapy Chat Podcast with Laura Reagan, LCSW-C. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. And now, here's your host, Laura Reagan, LCSW-C.
Hi, welcome back to Therapy Chat. I'm your host, Laura Reagan, and today I'm so happy to be joined by Deb Dana and Courtney Rolfe. Deb and Courtney, thank you so much for being my guests on Therapy Chat today.
It is lovely to be here with you. Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so glad to be with both of you. You co-wrote a book together, which I'll quickly show, but I'll let people see it again. Polyvagal Prompts, and that is very exciting. I know that this book is going to help a lot of people, so I really want to talk about it. But before we get into it, can we just start off by each of you telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Deb, you go first.
Okay. So I'm Deb Dana, and it's interesting when you asked that question, Laura. I was thinking, how do I think of what I do, who I am, or what I do? I'm a social worker. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I think that's my heart, although I don't see individual clients anymore because now I teach and write and consult, and so that's sort of the realm I've moved into in this phase of life. I will actually be 71 next month, and somehow it feels like a different chapter is emerging. So I love translating polyvagal theory into clinical application and then into application for what I like to call curious humans, because I think that's my passion in life right now, is to help people understand and befriend their nervous systems.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Courtney, tell us about you.
Well, the request for Deb to go first is because as a professional, as a clinician, I don't even know where I'd be without Deb having kind of trailblazed so much of this. So I'm a psychotherapist, and my practice is based in Chicago, and with trauma, work with mostly individuals, but maybe starting to bring couples into the mix just because this polyvagal lens is so powerful, and I can't wait to do more and more with it. And have been learning from Deb for years and training for Deb for years, and really trying to embody polyvagal theory. And it's been life-changing. So that's the foundation of my practice. And I also have just completed my somatic experiencing training. So really bringing in more and more body-based somatic work. It has been a really cool new path also. Oh, and I live in the UK, but my practice is based in Chicago and will remain based in Chicago. So it seems to be helpful to clarify that too.
Wonderful. Well, yes, and polyvagal theory has definitely changed my life and my practice, and I wouldn't understand it at all had I not learned from Deb. At least maybe now at this point in life, maybe because it's gotten out there in the public more, but it's a complex concept that's actually, you can look at it in a very simple way and work with it in a very simple way. So, but then, as I look at you both, and Deb has a artwork behind you of that brain and nervous system, it's like, it's a complex system too. And I want to ask real quick before we really get into anything else, if you'll share, Courtney, how did it change your life? How did polyvagal theory change your life?
The first thing I think of is, so I first went to a 2-day workshop with Deb in Chicago in 2017, and with my colleague who was also a trainer in Deb's foundations programs with me. And we both just walked out of there like, jaws on the ground, sort of like, what? We both already were kind of geeky about neuroscience and mindfulness, but that just really allowed us to step back and you really just start to see everything through that nervous system lens, and you start to see other people as people with nervous systems, and what you're dealing with is nervous system reactions and responses, and it broadens up the space for empathy, understanding, connection. So, I saw the change first with my clinical work, and sort of I went into sessions saying, I'm just going to share with you everything I know about this because it's really cool and it's really powerful. Let's see what happens. And it really was powerful. And I started to see empowerment and shift and change happen really quickly. And then on the personal level, there's no way to learn about polyvagal and embody it and just keep it limited to clinical work. So then you start to look at your relationships, right? And start to notice what feels nourishing, resourcing, kind for your nervous system. And then what causes, a lot of stress or reaction, and just start to take stock of, am I nourishing my nervous system with this life that I've built?
Yeah. Everybody get that? That's a deep question. I don't think the way that Western culture builds our lives or tells us to build our lives is in service to our nervous systems. And I think that more and more people are wanting to tune that out and tune in to ourselves and say, within this, how am I going to live? Because this thing around us is not necessarily working it's not working for a lot of people, but what can this like bubble of your life is you, and what you can influence. And I'm constantly thinking lately about, especially with all the violence and wars that are going on at all times, no matter when someone listens to this, there will be a horrible war happening somewhere and it'll be devastating. But how can we spread peace and spread hope and love and connection and safety? And it's not through spreading more war. War does not create safety. It creates generations of, traumatized people. And that's what we're all, living within is, past century and more of continuous wars and traumatized people trying to survive. So that's the backdrop for our conversation.
Yeah. It's real.
I love what you just said, Laura, though, that safety is an embodied experience. It's your autonomic nervous system leads you to safety. And so what do we do and how do we do it? And I think we find a way to anchor ourselves in that state of autonomic safety, because then that's the energy we're putting out into the world. Right. And that, I think, is how we will shape the world differently, by each of us finding our own way to that place of safety and connection. And then that ripples out. Right. So, one of the reasons why I think Polyvagal Prompts is it's a good time for this book, this invitation for a nervous system to find its way to safety and connection, right? Which, Courtney started us on this journey by, with her clients wanting to have things to do between sessions and so she started creating things, and then, came to me and said, what do you think? And I said, I think this is gorgeous. I think it could be a really wonderful, book. Right. And now, it has come to be. And I do think that it is a way for people to find their way to feeling some well-being. And that then through the nervous system is transmitted, is communicated to every nervous system around me.
Right. And that, it's that we need individual and collective healing, and we heal in community, but we also have individual healing to do regardless of what is happening around us. And I know for myself, I've wondered for years, and I think this is a relevant question now, and I guess will be forever, but I hope not if this, if more shifts can take place. But how do we keep going and keep hoping when there's so much devastation and so much pain, even when, how can I be okay when another is suffering? And we need to care about another's suffering, and it can make it impossible for us to function because their suffering is bringing us out of our ability to keep going. So can you speak about that a little bit in terms of polyvagal theory?
Sure. Let me start and then Courtney can jump in. I think what you're talking about really takes us to those three organizing principles of polyvagal theory because they impact the way we are human, right? We talk about neuroception, hierarchy, and co-regulation, and all of those are involved in what you just said, right? Neuroception is the way the nervous system offers and receives information, right? So, it's not just through our language, right? Our nervous systems, are having an autonomic conversation all the time, right? Below the level of awareness. And that then moves us toward or away from people, places, and things, right? So that's that amazing, pathway that the nervous system carries to give you cues to say, should you approach or should you avoid? Is this safe or unsafe? That's the question the nervous system is trying to answer moment to moment, safe or unsafe, right? And neuroception, when it gets enough cues of safety, brings us into connection. But when it gets cues of unsafety, it takes us into our survival strategies. And those places take us to that next organizing principle of hierarchy, which really is a lot of what Polyvagal Prompts brings you into understanding. The hierarchy, the ventral vagal place of connection, the sympathetic fight and flight survival strategy, and the dorsal vagal disconnect collapse survival strategy. And we're always moving between those places, all the time, in little ways, often in big ways sometimes. And the world we're living in right now is really challenging our capacity to stay enough anchored in ventral regulation and connection so that we can then send a welcome out into the world, right? We're really challenged to do that. The third organizing principle, co-regulation, is, what you were talking about with collective healing, right? We are wired to need connection with other safe humans. And when we can gather together, the power of my regulated system in connection with all these other regulated systems is just accumulates and grows and expands. And I think that's, for me, that's what I want to bring to the world. I want to bring people the capacity to be in ventral so that we can then gather with others in ventral and can begin to outweigh the cues of danger that are in the world. And then we can have the difficult conversations that need to happen. But if we're in survival strategies, we can't have those conversations. So for me, ventral regulation is a pathway to healing self and the world.
Yeah. And it's accessible to all of us.
We each have that pathway built into our biology. It's not like you were born or weren't born with it, or you gain it or lose it. It is there waiting for you to connect with it. And that, I think, is one of the beautiful, hopeful things about polyvagal theory, right? That Steve's amazing work, Steve Porges's amazing work, lets us know we all have this pathway waiting, right? I tell people we all have a home in ventral. That's what I call it. And we're waiting to find that pathway home.
Courtney, I definitely want to hear what you have to share.
Well, I think some of the things that came to my mind too are I continue to get new meaning out of this idea of befriending the nervous system that Deb originally gave us a while ago. And this, to me, more and more, that means being able to make some space for our survival responses, and that changing relationship with our sympathetic and that changing relationship with our dorsal is really powerful when we start to shift into appreciation and understanding of why my system is going into a thing. If I just trust that my nervous system is designed beautifully and there is a reason that it is, bringing me survival energy, whether that's, sympathetic or dorsal, there's a reason for it. If I just trust that, then I can kind of be with it in a different way and learn from it and sit with it. And then the more we bring that ventral capacity, we can really create space to hold that survival space, right? We say all the time, the goal is not to just be in ventral, right? We want to be able to have that different relationship with our survival responses. So when all these things are going on in the world and my system gets pulled into sympathetic or pulled into that shutdown collapse, to have that understanding and almost like a respect and a knowing and a caring for my own system of, I know what's happening. Doesn't mean it feels comfortable in the moment, right? But I can have that kind of line into some awareness of the reason, have that line of appreciation of what's going on, and then shift into attending and tending to, as opposed to wishing it wasn't or resisting what my system is doing, or not, getting caught up in confusion about why can't I just, get out of bed. And instead we shift into curiosity. Something is happening. If I trust that the nervous system is designed beautifully, can I just get curious about what's happening? And even if I can't understand it fully, can I attend to what it is that my system needs right now and bring in whatever resource, or take the time and space I need until I figure that out without the pressure to figure it out. So that's what comes to mind when I think of when we go through the difficult stuff. Our system is there to protect us. It's going to do what it does. And take the fear and the resistance, all of that out of that survival response, I think has been, for me, really powerful.
That's beautiful too.
And I'll add too, the flip side of that is another learning process has been that in ventral, we can hold a great deal of pain and suffering. We can hold grief and loss. It can be sad in ventral. Ventral doesn't mean puppies and rainbows all the time, right? But that ability for our own, system to stay anchored enough to then have space and capacity for very hard things is a whole different experience than my system needing to rescue me from grief and pain by pulling me into dorsal. So that's the other thing that kind of comes to mind, that ongoing relationship building that expands all the flexibility within all the states. Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts and so much resonance with what you're saying. So as we move into talking a little more in depth about your book, and I wanted to ask you this, and it sort of is maybe an umbrella for what Deb explained about the organizing principles. But throughout the book, which I love, I'll show this more, but how it's organized as kind of, you can write in it. It's like a journal almost. Although I would never write in it because I don't want to mess it up. So I would write it on a separate piece of paper or just buy 50 copies so I can write in it every time.
Courtney and I were smiling at each other when you said that it's like a journal, because in the beginning it was going to be the Polyvagal Journal, but in the publishing world, you can only have a certain number of words and to be called a journal. So then it became Polyvagal Prompts instead.
It's its own thing. It's not a workbook. Yeah. It's not a journal. It's not a book. It's prompts.
Right.
It's a new fusion. That's
Yes.
right. It's a new thing. Something new has been created through this co-creation. But throughout the book, you know, the word autonomic or autonomic nervous system is on almost every page. So I think just for people who are listening and maybe they've never heard of polyvagal theory before, or they've heard about it, but they don't know what it is, they're not familiar with your work. Could you explain what the autonomic nervous system is? Maybe demystify the words.
Oh, let's see what we can do. The easiest way to think about the autonomic nervous system, let's start with it's at the heart of your daily experience. It is where everything begins. And it's made up of, people probably know or remember from long ago, it's made up of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Those two branches put together make up your autonomic nervous system. The beauty of what Steve created when he defined polyvagal theory is that the parasympathetic system has its own two branches. It has a ventral and a dorsal branch of the vagus. And before Steve's work, we simply thought there was a parasympathetic and a sympathetic. And so in the clinical world, we had a difficult time trying to understand client experiences of shutdown or collapse or that freeze or dissociation because it was all sympathetic stress response. So his work really opened up our eyes and our understanding, and then our application, our work, to really understanding that we have parasympathetic ventral, which is safe connection. Then we have sympathetic nervous system, fight, flight. And then we have dorsal survival strategy of immobilization. So that's really the autonomic nervous system. That's what we're talking about. These three pathways that each have a different state, and we move through them all the time.
Beautiful. So I think that, you know, most of us don't necessarily, like general public, non-clinical population doesn't necessarily think I'm walking around in a nervous system that's impacted by all my interactions. We just think I'm trying to get a raise at work, or I'm trying to, you know, achieve something, or I want to be a parent or something like that, like goals. Everything's very goal driven in Western culture. And, yet we're reacting to everything that's happening internally and externally at all times. That's how we're existing.
Yeah. So if you look underneath the goal, you find a nervous system experience that is trying to help you reach that goal. And sometimes it's a ventral connecting, exploring options, planning, active experience. Sometimes it's a survival strategy because, as Courtney said, your system, is, neurocepting. It feels danger and it takes you to a survival strategy, which then is probably not going to help you meet that goal. But the nervous system is simply enacting a response because it feels you're in danger. The nervous system doesn't, make meaning or assign motivation. It simply acts. So, and then, just to bring the brain in for a minute, because we don't want to leave the brain out, that information all gets sent to the brain. And the brain's job is to make up a story to make sense of the information it's receiving. And the story might be, in sympathetic, nobody, it's so unfair, the world's unfair, other people are getting what I deserve. In dorsal, the story might be it's hopeless, don't even try. Right? We create these stories because we're trying to make sense of what's happening. Right? So that's the beauty of sort of going beneath the goal or beneath, what you're moving toward, to think, what's my nervous system state? Right? Because it's going to impact how I navigate this situation.
It's really kind of the crux of that paradigm shift when you start looking through the polyvagal lens, right? That our brains are not not in charge. The story comes second or third or fourth, but not first. That nervous system experience is happening first.
Yeah. And so, one of the reasons why, Courtney's work with her clients is so powerful is that she's taking that to them to say, we can't change the story, but if we change the state, the story will organically change. So instead of fighting against, you're working with. And that's, our invitation to everyone through our work, through our teaching, through our writing is get to know your nervous system, befriend your nervous system so you can partner with it as you move through the world.
And bringing explicit awareness to an implicit process. I go back to that phrase a million times in a week. That it feels like all roads of polyvagal work lead to that, right? So the prompts is another way that we are, inviting people to build on that explicit awareness because the process is happening. The system is there, whether we're paying attention to it or not. But the more ways we can use writing or music or prompts or therapy or, whatever it is, we're building our ability to maintain that explicit awareness. And that's a game changer. When I can watch what my system is doing, I can notice a response as an observer and learn from it instead of just sort of being hijacked down the river with it. It's like our life's work. It's an ongoing journey.
Yes. And I love what you said about the many different ways, because that really was, part of our work was to create a whole menu of ways people could get to know their nervous system, right? And because you may be pulled more towards movement or music, and I may be pulled towards imagery or art, and all of those ways are valuable.
I love it. And I also love that there's not like one path. I just love that idea that it's what resonates for each person. And that invites cultural difference and personal preferences and just choice, which is part of being in, your ventral system, is that you see that there are options instead of my choices here are to escape or kill that person, just to get really basic on the primal level. Of course, we have more options than that in today's world, but.
Well, it's funny because sometimes we'll see, I teach a lot of clinicians and wellness professionals, and there are a lot of times when I think for some folks, it feels like they want that one thing, right? Like, okay, yeah, but like, but just what works, right? Like, tell me a thing. And I keep thinking like a nervous system hack. It's this approach, it doesn't work like that. We need to have the space to explore and get curious. And I don't have the answer for anyone's nervous system beyond my own, really. But I can offer a lot of invitations. Then we can do a lot of supported exploration to see what's a resource and what's not. But there's definitely no hands down, this will work, this will help, this will regulate you, anything like that.
Because we're all unique, and we are.
Right. Our nervous systems work with those three organizing principles, and within that, they're shaped by our personal experience. And so, you gravitate towards one thing and I gravitate towards another. And the work is to really recognize that there, as you said, there's no one way. There's no right or wrong way. There's the way of your nervous system. And Courtney's in my work in Polyvagal Prompts is to give you all sorts of ways to get to know your nervous system so that this is what my nervous system reaches for. Right. And then maybe you look at, someone you're living with or love or work with and say, and this is what their nervous system reaches for. Right. So it becomes an interesting sort of, experience of being curious about, that's interesting. Courtney, that works for you. So wouldn't work for me, but tell me more. I'm interested in how it works for you. Right.
Well, I think one of the messages I'm getting from what you're saying and from this work generally is one that there are many paths to having I'm not going to say a regulated nervous system, and I'm going to say a sense of enough safety within yourself, because I think even that regulation, people are really focused on regulation, nervous system regulation. And it's beginning to sound like a straitjacket or something, like, like this either or, where it's a dance between one's nervous system and another's, and what's happening.
So maybe substitute flexibility for regulation. We're looking for flexibility, right? That we dysregulate and find our way back to regulation all the time. So it's that flexibility of coming back that is what we're looking for.
Yeah. And I'm said that in response to Courtney's thing about people wanting the hack, it's like, so how do I get regulated? And it's like, no, it's not that. It's not this or that. It's all of the possibilities. It's open, expansive perspective, and trusting your own inner experience, but really getting in tune with your inner experience.
Yeah, because, I think as you were saying, we're taught to override that wisdom. We're taught to not listen, or to listen and do something anyway, right? And so it is, as Courtney was saying, a paradigm shift to listen and to honor the wisdom, and then appreciate where your nervous system is taking you and be curious about why.
So it's not just about not feeling fear or not feeling anger or not feeling, I don't know how I can get out of bed today. It's about being curious about what is happening inside and knowing how to help yourself.
And knowing, that our nervous system is there for our protection. It's assisting us. It's activating for a reason. Kind of being able to normalize that experience is really powerful too. Right? So varying levels of safety as we all navigate the world. We've got varying levels of safety in the world. And so being able to sort of just allow your nervous system responses to be there with you, and making friends with the fact that it's activating for good reason can be very empowering, right? So we don't want our nervous system to not activate if we need it. If we're unsafe in the world, we need that response. We need that level of maybe vigilance or energy or something. And then, the more we build our capacity and flexibility, we can modulate that. We can influence that, and be more discerning with, what resources do I need from my system right now? Right? Do I need this level of activation? But there are times when we don't want to undo sympathetic nervous system response. We don't want to undo dorsal. We want to have that flexibility and awareness.
I think that's one of the prompts that we loved when we were doing it, was to write a letter of appreciation to your survival response, right? To really recognize, this is how it's helped me survive all this time.
That can be a powerful moment. And in therapy too, right? Like, how has your system been there to help you? And then it's go. Like, wow, it really has. And it's such an important reframe.
Again, it's depathologizing too. It's depathologizing to our system when we need to dissociate, because we can't tolerate what's happening. We're in a traumatic experience and we have to survive it somehow. Dissociation helps us survive the unspeakable, unfathomable. And then there's so much judgment about that in culture and in the mental health field and
judicial systems. Yeah, lots of systems are not quite caught up yet. Yeah.
Well, can you share a little more about, I particularly would like to talk about, I love what you just gave as an example, Deb, and 100% agree and celebrate the need to get to know our nervous systems and develop, like you said, befriend our nervous systems. I'd also like to talk about that concept of glimmers too, because that's something that I think is life-giving in really terrifying times. Can you give an example of, or maybe tell us a little bit about what glimmers are in your words, and then.
Sure. Yeah. And we did make sure to put some glimmer prompts in because glimmers are a gentle and yet powerful way that your system finds micro moments of okayness, right? Of some flavor of ventral, whether it's calm or ease or joy or happiness or connection. It doesn't matter. A glimmer is a micro moment, and they happen all the time, but we're not used to looking for them and we miss them. So the ability to notice a glimmer, name a glimmer, find it, feel it, celebrate it for just a moment. Then a glimmer comes in, it lands somewhere in your nervous system, and it feels good, and your nervous system says, oh, let's look for more. So we organically begin to look for more, right? There is a glimmer practice that invites you to look for more. The thing that happens with glimmers is every time one comes in, it's not just a one and done experience. They begin to accumulate. And so they give you more access to that ventral regulating energy. You can reach for it more easily. And the thing I love about glimmers, and I want to be sure to say, is that they're not a form of toxic positivity. They are not an invitation to count your blessings. It all will be well. What
Positive vibes only.
Exactly. No. What they are is a reminder that this human nervous system is built to beautifully hold all of the suffering and notice moments of goodness, notice moments of okayness, right? And this is the beautiful both and of the nervous system. And if you are working with your own nervous system, and if you're a clinician working with clients, building that ventral capacity is the essential first step for being able to be with your unresolved trauma and your suffering safely, right? So glimmers are this easy way, inviting way, joy-filled way to build that ventral capacity. So I'm just thinking, did you find a glimmer in your day yet today? Right? I don't know.
I'm talking to y'all.
Yeah, that's a glimmer.
It's a glimmer.
My granddaughter FaceTimed me this morning. She lost a tooth last night. Right? That was a glimmer in my day. I was like, oh. And what I loved about that, it was an unexpected glimmer, because there are unexpected glimmers, and they're also sort of predictable glimmers. Like looking out the window and seeing a bird is more predictable, but her losing a tooth is like, oh, that was very cool. Do you have a glimmer today, Courtney, so far?
Right now, the glimmer is just looking out this window that I have across. That's an easy go-to glimmer for me.
Yep.
My God, it's beautiful out this window. Just gorgeous. Yeah.
And so as you're saying that, and I'm receiving that, I can feel it land in my system too. That's also the power of a glimmer. When you share glimmers with others, our system feels it. Like you probably felt my glimmer energy when I was talking about my granddaughter and her tooth, and you had an experience as well. Again, it's that beautiful way that nervous systems communicate.
Yes. I want to say, a way that I have used glimmers during really hard times. There was a time, in this moment, I can't tell you exactly like what year it was in the past couple of years, but there was a time where I was having such a hard time. So many things were happening in my life that were just overwhelming to me. And I was like, I would wake up in the morning and I would just be kind of, bombarded with like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know, like, it wasn't even like, how do I get out of bed? It was just like, I'm laying in bed, just kind of stuck, having this huge torrent of pain drop on me as soon as I wake up. And then I thought about glimmers, and I thought, is there any way glimmers could help me here? Thank goodness for being a therapist. And I said, you know what? What else is here? What else is here? Is there anything here that's neutral or positive? Just neutral or positive? And I thought, oh, well, I'm being supported by this bed I'm laying in. I can feel the support of my bed. And you know what? I like the way my sheets feel. They're soft. And I just like touched my sheets between my hands and I was like, I like this fabric. Like, I like how it feels. And then my mind went to looking out the window and looking in the tree. And it's like, well, I can see the tree and I can see the leaves on the tree. Like, these are not like super califragilistic expialidocious type experiences, but it's just more of a positive experience than the pain that I was feeling. And that was enough. And it's sort of like, we think about, you have to meet your nervous system where it is. If you go, yeah, but I could win the lottery. It's like, well, that's a little bit too far from where I am right now. But, that would just give me enough like balance in my system to be able to get up out of bed. And then I'm like, okay, I can do this day, and then I would get through it, and not just get through it, but I would be more grounded and be able to not just be stuck in that really painful place that was true and real too, Nothing else changed besides being able to notice what else is here.
Yeah. And that's how your nervous system is reshaped, by tiny moments happening over and over and over. Again, I think that's a beautiful, hopeful message from polyvagal theory, is that we don't need this great, big, huge, transformative moment. The tiny moments add up and something feels a bit different.
Yeah. And as therapists, right, that's what we get to do too. We get to name those little moments of connection or joy or laughter, or just kind of name a special moment with a client to sort of help make space for it.
Exactly. It's just allowing our systems to be doing what they're doing and to notice the connection and the moments of peace and the moments of hope and joy. And, one of the prompts is very simple about just notice, when did you connect with someone today? It's like, oh, I can think about being in the grocery store and I'm feeling like I don't really want to be here. And then I look up and I say, oh, hello. And the person smiles and I'm like, oh, that was so nice. Like my system's like, give me more, give me more. Once you tap into it a little bit,
are wonderful. Those little micro moments throughout the day, out in the world, out in the wild. I love them.
And when you bring them into explicit awareness, they feel even bigger, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to share the book again, Polyvagal Prompts, Finding Connection and Joy Through Guided Explorations. I was trying to read it backwards there. So as we wrap up, can you tell us where we can find your book and everything that you're both doing? And I'll put these links in the show notes.
Well, it's published by Norton, so that would be the first go-to. But I think you can get it anywhere you buy books, wherever you want to buy books. For the most part, it should be available. We've got the audiobook version I saw today pop up on my Audible list, which was really interesting.
Fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, I'll throw my website out there. I don't know what I've got going on right now. Other than, no, I do. I don't have it posted, but I need to. We're launching our first UK-based 6-month Foundations of Polyvagal practice. Deb's kind of 6-month intensive. We're doing a UK kind of Europe time zone version, which has just launched. So that's really exciting. Yeah. Getting that going.
That is exciting.
Yeah. Modern Mind and Heart is my website. That's my practice. Modern Mind and Heart.
Okay. I'll put that on the show notes. And Deb, where are people finding what you're doing nowadays?
Oh, I seem to be getting back out in the world, which I love traveling to do in-person trainings. And I'll be seeing you at Networker next week. Right?
Yes, we'll be doing another interview there. So this is our warm-up.
Yeah. I just came back from Portugal with a lovely group of people. I just love being out connecting in a different way, which is nice. I just finished the Glimmers journal, which actually is a journal. Not a lot of words, a lot of place to write in. Please write in it, Laura.
I'll be getting that for sure.
That's with Norton. That'll be out, I don't know, next year, I suppose. And I also am just finishing with Sounds True based on my book Anchored. I think it's called the Nervous System Workbook, which takes the exercises and Anchored and then builds on those. So again, I'm just trying to bring to the world the ability to befriend your nervous system, because I do think, I can get overwhelmed by what's going on in the world very easily. And when I do that, I come back here to my system. This I can do. I am not perfectly, certainly getting better at it, but this I can do. And when I can regulate this, I then think I can impact the world differently. So that's really where I am. You can go to my website, and just launched a new website, redesigned. It's kind of fun. So Rhythm of Regulation, and come see what we're doing.
Wonderful. And I know that at least in the past, I'm sure that hasn't changed too much, that you have many resources on your website that people love. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you both for what you're doing in the world. It's an active resistance to promote hope in times where there's a lot of people spreading fear and hate and violence. And so it really matters, and it certainly matters to me. I know it matters to our listeners, and I'm very grateful for what you're doing. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you. Lovely way to spend some time.
Thank you for listening to Therapy Chat with your host, Laura Reagan, LCSW-C. For more information, please visit therapychatpodcast.com.